The Red Bull Driver Academy is known for its harsh decision making, and from an outsider like us, it can look like the decisions Dr. Helmut Marko and Christian Horner make are unjust and irrational. Although I can assure you that every single decision they make, although maybe harsh or unjust, is what makes Red Bull Red Bull.
And sometimes the decisions are made really easy for them.
That may sound like I'm guessing, however, in speaking to someone who is well versed in the Red Bull family, as well as a young driver in their academy, Enzo Fittipaldi, I can tell you that it's not a guessing game. Knowing someone who knows their way around the Red Bull paddock has its perks, and one of those perks is the stories that come out of it. Without fail, every single F2 and F3 session, Dr. Helmut Marko and Christian Horner are in Helmut's office watching, and I'm sure that footage gets analysed and reanalysed for each practice, sprint race and race. I was also fortunate enough around the Australian Grand Prix to meet and speak with Enzo and Pietro Fittipaldi at a private Haas event I was invited to, and I learned some interesting things. He repeated that Helmut is harsh but fair, and although Helmut is easy to make fun of, he knows what he's talking about. When you do a good job, he tells you, hey, you did good. And when you do a bad job, he's not afraid to confront you and tell you what you did wrong, but apply constructive criticism to make sure you don't make the same mistake again. In saying that, there have been times in the past where it looks like a drive has been treated unfairly and unjustly, and that's what we're going to be exploring in today's video. G'day guys, my name is F1 Luke Sam, Aussie F1 creator, and thank you for clicking on today's video. Now, before you call me a Mercedes meat rider or whatever the going term is these days, keep in mind that this video is made in good spirits. If I mention or say something about one of your favourite drivers, I'm sorry. Don't take it personally. Now let's get into our one honourable mention, and it's Brendon Hartley. Brendon Hartley's Red Bull career was cut rather short, unlike his hair. What are you doing? Come on, Brendon. If you shave that mop off the top of your head, you're sure to gain like 2/10 a lap in qualifying. But he failed to finish a lot of races, whether it was a mechanical issue or a DNF that was his fault or not his fault. Red Bull didn't seem to care. He was constantly outshined by his teammate Pierre Gasly during his time at Toro Rosso, and when you combine that with his shenanigans at Shanghai, it doesn't help his case. It was only around Monaco 2018 where Red Bull made it so obvious to the media that they wanted Brendon Hartley gone. I mean, Monaco? Really? Is it fair to hang shit on a driver only a few races into a season? At least wait a few races and then hang shit on them. Anyway, at the end of the season, Alex Albon replaced him in 2018. End of. A little bit harsh, but not enough to make the top 3 list. Alright, now into the mix. Of the recent Red Bull drivers who I think have been treated rather harshly, Pierre Gasly ranks about 3rd. Like, yes, he was young. Yes, he may have been accident prone at times, but I think the main reason he was demoted in 2019 was partially his performance, but majorly Max Verstappen. We all know how great Max is. That isn't the debate here, but one of Max's traits that he will never get rid of is his ability to absolutely decimate and destroy any teammate that he will ever have. Pierre Gasly was cut by Red Bull and sent back to Toro Rosso halfway through the 2019 season and replaced by Alex Albon, who had some pretty good performances for Toro Rosso. Pierre was alright, but one major fault that he had was he crashed in pre-season testing, which is arguably the single worst time to crash a race car, especially when it's the race car you've worked majority of your adult and teenager life to get into. From that point on, Red Bull constantly told the media and Pierre Gasly that he will have his seat for the whole season. He went to the media as late as Hungary, the race before Belgium where he was dropped, and told them that Pierre will obviously be in the car for the whole season. Are you serious? It's the whole Mattia Binotto thing with Ferrari before the Mattia Binotto thing. What is it with reassuring someone that they're going to have their seat or their job or the same position, and then going back on your word and taking it from them? On paper, it was simple. He was trailing Max in the championship, who was fighting for 2nd, and he was 6th. He was the top midfield car in a front-running car. He had the worst average qualifying gap to a teammate of just over half a second. Realistically, Pierre was never expected to beat or match Max Verstappen, but his struggles lasted longer than expected. I think the demotion was warranted, I just don't think it was handled in the right way. How are you going to defend someone and then demote them? It's just completely crushing their confidence. He would go on in Toro Rosso to get a P2 in Brazil in a very comedic way. At Red Bull, Alex Albon was in the running for his first ever F1 podium, and Lewis took him out, so Pierre Gasly took second. It was just, I don't know, it's just very funny. To make it even more ironic, he still couldn't beat Max, who finished first. On to the next driver, second in the list, we're going to be talking about Jean-Eric Vergne. Now, it's not because he's a shit bloke or he's a shit driver. I mean, he's a two-time champion in Formula E and one of the co-founders for Veloce Racing. So I've got a lot of respect for him, especially as a Veloce creator. But don't get it twisted, I'm not being too dramatic, and my view of this is not skewed because of this. Jean scored in his second ever outing for Toro Rosso, and at the end of the season, he beat his teammate. Now, this wasn't just an ordinary teammate, this was Daniil freaking Ricciardo. He had only had 11 races under his belt as he debuted the previous season for HRT around Silverstone, so it was a good feat, it was an accomplishment. The following season was a different story though. He was beaten by Daniil Ricciardo 7 points finishes to 3, and then Daniil got the call up to Red Bull following Mark Webber's retirement. This meant the following season, Jean was partnered up with Daniil Kvyat at Toro Rosso still. In 2014, it was Jean-Eric Vergne's time to shine. He has a rookie teammate in Daniil Kvyat. You must beat Daniil. That is the rule. You have to do it. If you don't beat Daniil, you lose your drive. To put it simply, he went on to beat Daniil and then he lost his drive. What? Daniil Kvyat, after losing to Jean-Eric Vergne, got the call up to Red Bull the following season to replace Sebastian Vettel, who left for Ferrari. Although Jean beat Daniil Kvyat at Toro Rosso, he was still overlooked for a promotion to the first Red Bull team. Can you imagine how demoralizing this was for Jean-Eric Vergne? I mean, a lot of us joke about our job saying, "Oh, this is bullshit, I'm gonna quit." Jean-Eric Vergne went on to quit. Do you think he was rightfully overlooked as a first-team prospect? Let me know in the comments. And this video is just full of irony, and here's a little bit more. I say that Daniil Kvyat took his seat, and that's a big up for Daniil. However, the number one place on this list is Daniil Kvyat, commonly referred to as Torpedo due to comments by Sebastian Vettel after a race.
You came like a torpedo.
Daniil Kvyat has torpedoed his way to the top of this list, and there's multiple reasons. As I alluded to earlier, he was given that promotion to Red Bull. He was even given a promotion to Toro Rosso over Carlos Sainz. So the start of his career was actually a trajectory up. So where exactly does it go bad for him? Well, in 2015, Red Bull became a bit of a joke. They slipped from the second fastest team to the fourth fastest team. And here's some foreshadowing for you. In Daniil Kvyat's first race for Red Bull, he didn't even start the race. He had a gearbox failure on his lap to the grid. Following this, Kvyat had two major incidents. He had a really bad one in Q3 around Suzuka, and he also had another one in Coda. Now at this point, I did truly believe that Red Bull had two drivers who could fight for a drivers' championship and bring Red Bull back to the top. However, one of them wasn't Daniil Kvyat. In 2016, just 4 races into the season and following a third place in China, Daniil Kvyat was demoted to Toro Rosso and replaced by Max Verstappen. Now, don't get me wrong, do I think this was a good decision? Yes, but 4 races into the season is questionable. It would prove to be the right move for Red Bull, and in retrospect, we can look back and say it was, but why not demote him at the end of last season, or halfway through the season at least? 4 races in is uncanny. We know it was the right decision for Red Bull because Max Verstappen would go on to win his first race for Red Bull around Spain after Mercedes did the hokey pokey and took each other out. And he's also fighting for his 3rd world championship, and he will become a 3-time world champion. But the treatment of Daniil, only 4 races into the 2016 season, is just unheard of. It's uncanny, it's unjust. What was going on there in the brain department? Max took everything from this man, and I'd even argue that Red Bull's treatment of Daniil Kvyat was a godsend compared to how Max Verstappen's treatment of Daniil Kvyat was. When you compare them, Red Bull was Jesus, and he just taught 1,000 men how to fish and feed their families for life. Max didn't only take Daniil's seat, he took his partner, Kelly PK, took his biological daughter, Penelope. Now this is their personal life, and I do not in any means feel comfortable nitpicking at these drivers' personal lives, right? I can separate the sportsman from the man. But this whole situation makes me feel bad watching. I could only imagine how Daniil feels. Daniil Kvyat is likely watching Max Verstappen's career as if it's what could have been his own career if he didn't tumble down the shitter. Look, sometimes in life you crank that soldier boy like Max Verstappen, and sometimes that soldier boy cranks you. There's also a really good podcast, Track Limits Pod, which Daniil Kvyat was on, which says he turned down a Ferrari drive for Red Bull, which is, it's just gotta hurt so much. I recommend watching that and listening to that on all your favorite platforms. I'm not sponsored by them, I have nothing to do with them, I just think it's extremely interesting. However, something I do sponsor is my personal links, which you can find in the description. I've got TikTok, I've got Instagram, I got Twitter, I got Threads, I got the whole kit and caboodle. If you did like today's video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you are new, and hit the bell to be notified every single time I upload. If you watching, if you've watched this far into the video, thank you very much. Like, I genuinely do appreciate it. But on that note, I've been F1 Luke Sam, and you, as always, have been amazing. Stay safe.